I caught my husband lying on a Thursday, but not in some dramatic, yelling, caught in the act kind of way. It was much quieter than that, and somehow worse. I was sitting on the edge of our bed, folding laundry like I always do after work, and his phone buzzed next to me on the nightstand. Normally, I wouldn't touch it, not because I believed in privacy so much, but because I honestly never cared to. He never had anything interesting on there, just work emails, boring group chats with his friends about football, and dumb memes from his brother. But that day, I don't know why, maybe because he'd been gone more than usual, or maybe because I just had a feeling I didn't want to name yet, I looked. The screen lit up, and it was a text from someone saved as Ray, with a smiley face. The message said, "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're seriously something else." There was no punctuation beyond that, and it made it worse. If someone had tried to cover their tracks, maybe used vague language or been cold and distant, I might have talked myself out of what I already knew. But this message was warm, stupidly intimate, and casual in a way that screamed routine. I just sat there staring at the phone while it dimmed back into black. I didn't touch it. I didn't open anything. I just sat there in complete silence while the laundry sat in a half-folded pile on my lap. My husband, Daniel, was downstairs, probably pouring himself a drink or making that stupid protein shake he acts like he can't live without. I didn't even hear him moving around down there. Everything suddenly felt muffled, like the sound in a movie when the bomb goes off and all you hear is the characters breathing and distant ringing. Except the bomb wasn't a sudden boom. It was a quiet little buzz and a stupid smiley face from Ray. When he came upstairs, I acted normal. That surprised me more than anything. He walked in wearing his usual smug look after work, tie loosened, hair messed up just enough to look like a Calvin Klein ad. He smiled at me, said something about traffic being awful again, and then kissed me on the head like nothing was wrong. I could still smell the cologne I bought him last Christmas. "You okay?" he asked, grabbing the phone from the nightstand and stuffing it into his pocket so quickly it made my stomach twist. "Yeah," I said, folding the last pair of socks with more care than any human should give to socks, just tired. He nodded like he believed me, or maybe he didn't and just didn't care to ask. I followed him downstairs after a while, made us both dinner, and we sat in front of the TV, watching a show neither of us really liked anymore. He laughed at all the right moments, reached over to touch my knee like he was still playing the part of a loving husband, and I stared at the screen while my thoughts looped the message over and over again. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You're seriously something else. What the hell happened last night?" The worst part was that I couldn't even remember what we did the night before. I had a late shift, came home after 10, and he said he was watching a game with his brother. I didn't question it. I was exhausted. I took a shower and passed out next to him without a second thought. He probably got up afterward. That's when it must have happened. Whatever last night was, it didn't include me. I didn't say a word that night, didn't scream or cry or throw anything, didn't blow up his life with a text or a slap or some Instagram post like I've seen other women do when their husbands cheat. I just waited. That's what I always did when something didn't sit right. I observed. I collected. I let the facts pile up until the lie got too heavy for him to carry anymore. I waited 2 more days before doing anything, and during those 2 days, I memorized everything about him. The way he stirred his coffee, the way he whistled while shaving, the way he left his shoes half under the couch like a damn child. I studied him like I was about to take a final exam on his bullshit. And when I finally pulled the trigger, I made damn sure he'd never see it coming. I didn't find out the truth by accident. I went looking for it. That Saturday, he told me he had a client meeting at noon. It wasn't suspicious in itself. He often worked weekends, especially when the quarter was ending. But this time I offered to drive him. That was my first move. I acted like it was no big deal, just that I needed the car to run errands and would be passing through that area anyway. He hesitated for maybe 2 seconds too long before agreeing. Said I could drop him off and he'd Uber home. Said it would save time. So I drove. We barely talked on the way. He stared at his phone like he always did when he wanted to avoid real interaction. I asked questions about the meeting, where, how long, what kind of client, and he gave me vague answers, too fast and too polished. I noted the address he gave me, something about a restaurant in Midtown. But when we pulled up, there was no reservation. I waited until he walked in, circled the lot once, then parked. I stayed in the car across the street with the windows halfway down. I waited 10 minutes. 15. He never came back out. I walked inside. There was no Ray at any table, no meeting, no reserved section. I asked the hostess. She shook her head, said nobody by that name had a booking and that she hadn't seen anyone matching his photo. I thanked her, walked out, and called him. He didn't pick up. 2 minutes later, I got a text. Meeting just started, can't talk. I stared at the screen and felt the shift in my chest. That's when I knew it wasn't just an emotional affair or some random flirtation he brushed off in a bored moment. He was lying actively and carefully, which meant it was deliberate and practiced, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I got in the car and pulled up the location sharing app we both had installed when we got new phones last year. He had no idea I still had access. It wasn't a shady thing, just something we agreed to in case of emergencies. But he probably forgot. Or maybe he thought I'd never use it. Either way, I refreshed the location. He wasn't at the restaurant. He was 3 miles away, near a small boutique hotel by the edge of town. I didn't rush. I didn't call him again. I just drove slowly, calmly, like I was going to the grocery store. I parked 1 block down and walked to the hotel. There was no doorman, no front desk that checked IDs. It was the kind of place people booked when they didn't want to be seen. I walked in like I belonged there and headed straight to the elevator. The moment I saw his name on the check-in board next to room 304, I knew I wasn't wrong. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I waited in the hallway for nearly 10 minutes until I saw them both. She came out first, brunette, maybe late 20s, dressed like she was trying not to look like she just had sex, but failing at it. He followed her out, holding his phone, smiling like he just landed a big deal. That's when I stepped in. "Forgot your tie," I said, tossing it at him. It hit his chest and fell to the floor. His smile collapsed so fast it was almost funny. She froze, looked between us, and then did the usual thing. She backed away like she wasn't involved, like she didn't know he was married, like that made it any less her fault. He looked like a scared child. "Laura, I can explain." "Can you?" I said, still calm. "Because I'm dying to hear how this isn't what it looks like." She mumbled something about being late for work and rushed down the hall. He didn't follow her. Smart move. I stood there, arms crossed, blocking the elevator button. "You've been seeing her for how long?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck like that would help him think faster. "It's not serious. It was just a mistake." "One mistake?" I asked. "Or are we counting by nights?" "It wasn't. Look, I didn't mean for it to go this far." "How far did you mean to go? Just a few drinks? A kiss in a parking lot?" "Please, let's talk about this at home," he said, his voice quieter, more desperate. "We're talking about it here," I said. "You had no problem cheating in public. Don't act like you're embarrassed now." He looked around nervously, like the wallpaper might grow eyes. "I don't love her. It was just a distraction." "I'm your wife, Daniel," I said. "Not some placeholder you get to step around when you're bored." He finally stopped moving. His voice dropped lower. "I know I fucked up." "Yeah, you did," I said. "But it's not just that you cheated. It's that you lied to my face for months and made me feel like I was crazy for noticing." He looked down, but I wasn't finished. "I'm not crazy. I'm not blind. And I'm not staying." Then I turned around and left. He didn't follow me. That part hurt more than anything. I didn't go home right after the hotel. I drove to the park 2 blocks from our house and sat in the car for a long time. Engine off, windows rolled halfway down. It was a quiet afternoon. A few kids were chasing each other near the swings, and 2 older women were walking in laps around the pathway with small hand weights and matching outfits. They looked like they'd been doing this for years, like nothing ever changed in their routines. I envied that. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, breathing through the fog that had been building in my chest since I first saw that message on his phone. It didn't feel real yet, even after confronting him, even after watching her run out of the hallway like a coward. It felt like I had been dropped into someone else's life and told to keep going like nothing had shifted. But it had. Everything had. When I finally walked through the front door of our house, he was already sitting on the couch. That part surprised me. I thought maybe he'd need more time to get back. Maybe he thought he could fix it quickly by being there before me, by pretending he cared enough to race home and wait. He stood up when I walked in. His mouth opened like he was about to speak, but I raised my hand, and he stopped. I dropped my keys on the table by the door, took off my shoes, and walked past him into the kitchen. I needed something in my hands. I filled a glass of water and drank the whole thing before turning back around. He was still standing there like a lost child. "You can talk now," I said. "Go ahead." Start explaining. He sat down again, but I didn't. I stood by the counter with my arms crossed. It started about 6 months ago, he said, his voice low, almost like he was trying to confess without really admitting anything. We met at that networking event downtown. I wasn't planning anything. It just happened. I scoffed, not loud, just enough for him to hear it. I didn't mean for it to turn into anything serious, he continued. At first, it was just coffee. Talking. I didn't even know she was interested in that way. But you didn't stop it, I said. You let it go on. You encouraged it. He nodded. Yeah, I did. Why? I asked. Were you bored? Was it about sex? Was it just something new and shiny? He rubbed his face like that would help him figure it out. I think I felt invisible, he said. At home. At work. Everywhere. And she made me feel like I mattered again. I wanted to throw something at him. Not because he was wrong, but because I knew what he meant. There were nights I felt invisible too. Mornings where we barely spoke. Days where we passed each other in the hallway like strangers living under the same roof. But I didn't cheat. I didn't go looking for someone else to make me feel seen. I stayed. I tried. And he gave up. So instead of talking to me, I said, instead of saying you felt ignored or disconnected or whatever word you want to use, you went and fucked someone who didn't know the first thing about you. I didn't know how to bring it up, he said. I thought maybe I'd get over it. That it was just a phase. You risked our entire marriage over a phase? He looked at the floor, and I saw his jaw tighten. I'm not proud of it. You shouldn't be, I said. And you don't get credit for admitting it now. You didn't confess. I caught you. If I hadn't checked your phone, would you still be sneaking off to hotel rooms on Saturdays? He didn't answer. Would you? He looked up finally. Probably, yeah. That was the first honest thing he said since I walked in. I went upstairs and packed a bag. I didn't yell. I didn't cry in front of him. I just grabbed what I needed, clothes, toiletries, my work laptop, and stuffed it all into a suitcase. He followed me upstairs, but didn't try to stop me. Maybe he thought it would make him look worse. Maybe he really didn't know what to say. When I zipped the bag and turned around, he was leaning against the doorframe like he had something on the tip of his tongue. Don't ask me to stay, I said before he could open his mouth. I wasn't going to, he replied, almost whispering it. I walked past him, down the stairs, and out the door. The air outside felt different, thicker somehow, like it was holding all the weight I couldn't carry anymore. He didn't follow me to the car. He just stood there in the doorway, watching like a man who finally understood that his life was no longer his to fix. I didn't go to a friend's house or a hotel. I went to my sister's. She lived 30 minutes away and had no idea what was coming. I called her while sitting in my car outside a pharmacy parking lot, trying to make my voice sound like I hadn't just walked out of my own house because my husband had been screwing someone else in a hotel. She picked up on the second ring, and I told her I needed to stay the night. I didn't explain right away. She didn't press, probably because she heard enough in the tone of my voice to know it wasn't something to talk about over the phone. She left the porch light on and didn't say a word when she saw the suitcase in my hand. I walked into her guest room, closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall until the sun came up. The next day I told her everything. I didn't dramatize it or try to cushion the details. I just told her what I saw, what he said, how long it had been going on. She didn't say much at first, just poured us both coffee and listened. Then she asked the one question I hadn't thought about yet. What are you going to do now? It caught me off guard. I didn't have a plan beyond leaving the house. I hadn't thought about money, bills, what to tell work, what to tell anyone. I hadn't even considered whether I was coming back. That was the moment I realized I needed more than just distance. I needed something that would make him feel it. Something that wouldn't let him walk away from this like it was just a rough patch in our marriage. I wasn't going to cry and forgive and pretend it never happened. I spent the next 2 days planning everything. I pulled all my personal documents out of our shared files: passport, bank records, my birth certificate, the deed to the car I paid for myself. I called the bank and had my name taken off the joint account. I opened a new one and transferred what was mine, every dollar that had come directly from my paycheck. I canceled the automatic payments for our internet and utilities because they were under my name. I changed the password to my email and removed every shared access he had to any of my online accounts. If he wanted to live alone, I was going to make sure he felt it in every way possible. On the third day, I went back to the house while he was at work. I knew his schedule. He wouldn't be home until after 6. I parked 2 streets over and carried boxes into the house one by one. I didn't take everything, just what was mine. My clothes, my books, my jewelry, my laptop, my photo albums, a few kitchen things that were gifts from my mother. I left the rest. I wasn't interested in tearing the house apart. That would have given him too much credit. I didn't want to destroy anything. I wanted to remove myself from it completely. But I did leave one thing. On the dining table, where we used to eat dinner and argue about who left the back door unlocked, I left a manila envelope. Inside were copies of the receipts showing the accounts I'd closed, a printout of the hotel reservation under his name, a copy of the text I had screenshotted from his phone, and a note that said, "Now you know what it feels like to lose something you didn't think could leave." I locked the door behind me and left the key in the mailbox. I didn't look back. That night, he called 6 times. I didn't answer. Then he sent a long message asking me if I was really leaving for good. He said he didn't blame me, that he knew he messed up, that he had been thinking about us, and how maybe we could fix things if we took a break and figured out what went wrong. I didn't reply. The next day, he tried again. This time, his message was more urgent, less apologetic, more frustrated. He said I was making it worse by ignoring him, that if I had just talked to him, maybe we could have handled this privately. I blocked his number. By the end of the week, his brother messaged me on Instagram asking if I was okay and if there was anything he could do. That told me everything I needed to know. He had started telling people, trying to get ahead of the story, probably painting it like a misunderstanding or some mutual drifting apart. I called his brother directly and told him the full truth. No emotion, just facts. He didn't say anything for a few seconds, then muttered, "Jesus," and apologized. That was it. I didn't need more. The following Monday, I went back to work. I showed up on time, logged in like normal, did my job, and made no mention of anything. Nobody knew I had walked out of a 10-year marriage 3 days earlier. It wasn't anyone's business. But I walked different. I stood straighter. I didn't check my phone every break. I wasn't waiting for anyone's call. It was 2 weeks later when he finally got to me again. He used a different number. I almost didn't answer, but the area code looked like it might have been my aunt's. The moment I heard his voice, I nearly hung up. He started talking before I could say anything. Like if he said it fast enough, it wouldn't sound as pathetic as it was. "I'm not calling to argue," he said. "I just want to talk like adults. No yelling. No blaming. Just talk." I sat there staring out the window of my sister's guest room, phone pressed to my ear, trying to decide if I had the energy for this. I didn't say anything, which he took as permission. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything. About what I did. About what you did. I deserved a lot of it. I know that. But I also think we need to figure out what happens next." "What happens next," I said, "is you get used to being alone." There was a pause. I could hear him breathing. "I didn't expect you to just disappear like that," he said. "I thought you'd yell or throw things or make a scene. But you didn't. You just left. You expected drama?" I asked. "You thought if I screamed, you'd get to feel like the victim?" "No, that's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" "I meant it felt final. Like you weren't just mad. You were done." I said. "I am." He was quiet again. "I've been going to therapy," he said. "I know it's late, but I had to start somewhere. I've been trying to figure out what made me do it." "You cheated," I said. "You weren't possessed. You weren't tricked. You made a choice." "I know. I didn't leave because you made a mistake. I left because you didn't care that you were making it. You knew what it would do to me, and you did it anyway. I was selfish. You still are." "I miss you," he said. "That's not enough," I replied. "Missing me doesn't undo what you did. It doesn't rebuild trust. It doesn't erase the image of you with someone else. I never wanted to lose you. But you didn't care enough to keep me. I want to fix this," he said. "I want to go to counseling together, figure out if we can save the marriage." "There's nothing to save," I said. "It's over." "I don't believe that." "You don't have to," I said. "But it doesn't change the truth. I think about you every day. You should. I don't know who I am without you. That's not my problem anymore." It was silent for a long time after that. I thought he'd hang up. I was hoping he would. But then his voice came back, quieter, heavier. "What did I mean to you?" he asked. "Before all of this, what was I?" "You were my husband," I said. "You were the person I thought I could trust. I let you see every side of me. I gave you 10 years of my life. You were my partner, my friend, my family. And you turned yourself into a stranger because you wanted to feel interesting. I never stopped loving you. You stopped respecting me. That's worse." He let out a breath like he'd been holding it in the whole time. So this is it. This is me moving on, I said. This is you living with your choices. I wish you'd give me another chance. I gave you 10 years. He didn't say anything after that. I hung up. That night, I took a walk around my sister's neighborhood. It was quiet, the kind of place where people left bikes in front yards and waved at each other from porches. I didn't bring my phone. I didn't need music. I just walked and let the silence do what it needed to. For the first time since everything happened, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not relief, just a calm I hadn't known in weeks. The last time I saw him was at the lawyer's office. It was a neutral space, cold but clean, with framed stock photos of handshakes and city skylines, and a stack of untouched magazines in the corner. We sat across from each other at a long table, the lawyer in between us, flipping through paperwork. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt wasn't ironed, and his hair wasn't combed. I noticed those things not because I cared, but because I used to be the one who made sure he never left the house looking like that. Now I didn't even bother to look for long. He kept trying to meet my eyes, but I focused on the papers. Sign here. Initial here. Check the box that applies. The legal process of dissolving a marriage is strangely efficient. The woman guiding us through it moved like she'd done it 1,000 times, and maybe she had. For her, it was routine. For me, it was the closing scene of a life I had lived fully, even when he hadn't. After we signed everything, she gave us a moment alone to talk, like she assumed we'd want that. I didn't, but I stayed seated. He didn't say anything for the first minute, just stared at the table and rubbed his thumb along the edge of the chair like he was rehearsing something. I waited, because I wanted to know what his last words would be, what kind of ending he thought he deserved. I never wanted this to happen, he finally said. I really didn't think it would come to this. You made sure it did, I said. You just thought I'd let it go. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I thought that. I figured you'd be mad, maybe even furious, but I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't think you'd just disappear like that. You thought wrong, I said. I stopped making excuses for you the day I saw you walk out of that hotel room. He looked at me then, really looked, like he hadn't done in months. You were always better than me. That's not true, I said. I just didn't waste what we had. I kept waiting for you to scream or break something or throw me out, he said. But you didn't. You just took it all away without warning. You had 6 months of warning, I said. You just ignored it. He leaned forward slightly. I don't want to forget what we had. I still remember our first apartment. That tiny kitchen where we couldn't both stand at the same time. I remember the trip to Michigan and that night in the cabin when the power went out. I remember everything. I do too, I said. But it doesn't change what you became. He nodded again, slower this time. I hope you're okay. I mean that. I will be, I said. I already am. The lawyer came back in and handed us each a copy of the agreement. We signed the last page, and that was it. We stood up, didn't shake hands, didn't hug, didn't say goodbye. He walked out first. I waited until I heard the door close behind him before I left. A few weeks later, I moved into my own apartment. It's not big. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I bought my own dishes, picked my own bedding, chose my own towels. I wake up alone, and it's quiet, but it's not the kind of quiet that feels like something's missing. It's the kind that feels earned. I didn't tell a lot of people about what happened. My sister knew, obviously. A couple close friends. My coworkers noticed something was different, but I didn't give them details. They didn't need them. What mattered was that I was showing up. On time. Focused. Steady. I didn't miss a single shift. I didn't crumble. I didn't break. Sometimes, late at night, I think about all the small decisions that brought me here. Checking his phone. Driving to the hotel. Packing my bag. Leaving the note. Saying no to his second chances. All of it. Not one of those choices felt easy in the moment, but now, they all feel necessary. I didn't just walk away from a man. I walked away from becoming someone who settles. Someone who shrinks herself to protect someone else's comfort. He called again once, about a month after the divorce. Left a voicemail. Said he was just checking in. That he hoped I was doing all right. I deleted it before it finished playing. That version of my life is over. I don't need to hear his voice to remember why. I don't have some big plan for what's next. I'm not moving to another city or going on some soul-searching vacation. I'm just living. I go to work. I come home. I take walks in the evening. I read before bed. I sleep through the night. For now, that's enough. That's what I got from all this. Not closure. Not clarity. Just the quiet confidence that I didn't stay where I wasn't respected, that I didn't try to rebuild something that was already burned down. I left when it mattered. I chose myself. That's how the story ended. Or maybe that's how the next part begins. Either way, I'm fine. And that's more than enough.